Welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Yes, we are on to part 3 of Israel and Iran, understanding more about what's going on there and why we should care. Tried my best to get it done in 2, however, there's just too much information, and I don't want to overwhelm you, quite honestly. So if you haven't had a chance, I highly encourage you to back up and check out part 1 and part 2. This will be the 3rd part. It will be the last part in this series, I promise. We left off in the last video talking about the Arab League Summit that occurred in 1967. It was at this time that basically the Muslim countries that are surrounding Israel came together and decided or agreed on 3 things. No peace, no negotiations, and no recognition. Those are the 3 things they agreed upon regarding Israel. There would be no peace with Israel. There would be no negotiations with Israel. There would be no recognition of Israel. Again, makes a pretty clear statement as to why that would be a problem. So, if you're ready to dive into what happens next, let's hit the intro and we'll begin. Fast forward a bit more. 1973, we have the Yom Kippur War. Now, this was a surprise attack on the Jewish people on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the entire Jewish year. It is a day where people do not work, they don't bathe, they don't eat, they go to worship all day. It is a very, very holy day. And they chose this holy day to attack because they knew that the Jewish people would be distracted with their preparations for this holy day. Did they win? No. The Jewish people won. There is a common thing that happens in Jewish communities of you tried to kill us, you didn't, we survived, let's eat. That's a common theme that happens because after a while of constantly being the target, you need to develop a thick skin and a way of celebrating each little achievement. So that's what the Jewish people did. Fast forward a couple more years, we're now in 1979, and we have the Camp David Accords. At this one, they pulled, again, the Arab countries, the Prime Minister of Israel. They came together, and the Prime Minister of Israel said, okay, let's talk about a peace agreement with Egypt. We're going to give up the Sinai Desert. We're going to have peace. And the leader of Egypt agreed, but then he was assassinated because, remember, the League of Arabs. No recognition. No negotiation. No peace. Egypt's prime minister, the leader of Egypt, recognized Israel. He was working towards peace. How dare he? He was assassinated because it went against what the Arab countries were wanting. Moving forward a little bit more, in 1982, there is a Jordan monarchy who is, so the country of Jordan, there's a monarchy there. They are expelling the members of this PLO. Remember, that's Palestinian Liberation Organization. And they're like, you guys are causing problems. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I got to get out of here. They expelled them. They went to Lebanon. because there was growing concerns that they were going to try to attack and overthrow the government of Jordan. So the PLO decides, fine, I'll show you. And they start throwing rockets at Israel. Again, because if you're in an argument with your brother or your sister, it's much easier to pick a fight at somebody else if you're not going to win with your brother and your sister. And in 1982, we now have a war with Lebanon. The PLO is throwing rockets at Israel. Israel responds and takes almost over the entire Lebanon area. There's a lot of international pressure after this takeover of land for Israel to give the territory back. Now remember, in war, when you conquer an area, you take the territory, you take the resources. Much like in cards, if you take a hand, you take all the cards. You don't get to have somebody say, that's not fair, give it back. That's not how it works. But there's international pressure because Israel's this tiny country and people are concerned about these Arab nations and what will they do if we tick them off. So Israel, give the land back, and there's this recurring theme throughout history. It's almost like a vacuum. And there's this space of Israel takes over the area. Okay, give it back. You didn't mean to do that. Let's appease them. We'll give them back. So there's constantly this vacuum, this area where there's nobody leading this area. There's no government, and it just creates a perfect petri dish situation for terrorist groups. It's within these border areas. So that's what's happening. We have now filled up to 1987, and we have the Intifada. And this is basically an increased Arab uprising. There is a huge movement within the Arab population to do whatever it takes to get the Israeli people out, to get the Jewish people out, to make them regret moving here, get them out by any way possible. In 1993, Israel's prime minister again reaches out to the PLO, the Palestinian Legalized Organization, known as the Oslo Accords. Okay, basically, they went to this group and they said, okay, can we just acknowledge that we as individuals have a right to exist and stop the violence? We don't have to agree on policies. We don't have to agree on land. Can we just admit that we as individuals, you and I, both have a right to exist? And you know what happened? The PLO officers refused. Because again, no peace, no recognition, no negotiation. So then we have 2000, and we have the Camp David Summit. The United States has always seen Israel as their ally. We are a place for U.S. to kind of have intel in the area, to have information. We have a vested interest in, we as the United States of America have a vested interest in keeping peace in that area. Nobody wants war, so peace is a good thing. So they have the Camp David Summit, and Israel is making very many concessions. They say, okay, we'll give up the control of the Temple Mount, which is like the most holy place in Israel. We'll give up the Gaza Strip. We'll give up highly desired areas. We'll take the scraps and the PLO refused. And instead, they decided it was time to start launching attacks. They didn't want all these places. They didn't want the Jewish people to exist. They wanted them gone. Now, in 2004, the PLO leader passes away. And any good group, gang, terrorist, whatever you want to call them, when your leader passes, there is a bit of a pause and a shakeup to figure out what's going to happen next. And with the PLO leader passing, there was a shakeup for a little bit. In 2006, lo and behold, there starts a new group. It's called Hamas. This is a group that is quickly rising to power. And so Israel again reaches out, says, okay, here, we want to exist. We want to be in peace. We want to just have a right to exist and live. I'll give you the Temple Mount. We'll give you the Gaza Strip, all these other highly desired areas. Just let us exist. Acknowledge that our presence is here. The leader of Hamas does not even acknowledge these offers. Instead, they walk out, and then the attacks begin. 2006, we have Gaza War Part 1. There's attacks on Jewish settlements. 2014, Gaza War Part 2. Attacks on Jewish settlements by Hamas. Again. 2021, Gaza War Part 3. Feels like a really bad sequel. Attacks on Jewish settlements by Hamas. During this time, again, you can only take so much beating up before something's got to change. Israel constructs this thing called the Iron Dome. And basically what it is, it's a counterattack measure that is used to shoot down incoming airborne missiles to minimize damage and loss of life. The Iron Dome does not send missiles into other countries just for funsies. It's specifically designed to connect with an incoming missile in the air to minimize damage and loss of life. And it works very well. It does. Moving forward just a little bit, sometime there was multiple occasions. Within the 2020s, there was a group of meetings called the Abraham Accords. And at this meeting, we have Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, 3 of the countries, and they band together and they say, fine, Israel, fine, you can exist. You're not our enemy. But there are 3 countries out of a bunch in that area. And Iran, a different country, is fostering and encouraging growth of terrorist groups. So you got brother and sister deciding to go different ways. Another one in the pack, Saudi Arabia, decides, okay, we're going to form an alliance with Israel. We're going to let them use our airspace. If Iran tries to attack, we're going to... They see the power of the Iron Dome. Israel, you can help us. Okay, fine, you can use our airspace. We're good. President Obama in the United States wanted to have a balance of power within the region and tried to keep the U.S. out of the conflict. Now, some may say that's a good thing and some may say that's a bad thing. Again, Israel is the U.S.'s ally. They are a voice in that area. They have important intelligence in that area, and it's important to back your allies at the same time. Certainly, every country has its right to rule its own as they see fit. However, However, there's a limit to everything. Now, when President Trump took his first role in office, he took a different stance on the war. He took the stance of, we're going to recognize Israel, and if you have a problem with that, we will withdraw all of our funding from your terrorist groups. And that's not a facetious thing. It's not just Hamas as a terrorist group. Around the world, there are multiple. And many of the terrorist groups work within governments and have great connections. So it's a big deal. And President Trump said it like it is. Okay. Now we had a change of power again in the United States, and we had President Biden step in, and he basically withdrew the U.S. support in Afghanistan, saying it's not our problem, you guys figure it out. This was a tough situation, and I know a lot of people in the United States have a lot of strong opinions on it. There were people who said, why are we in this area to begin with? We don't have anything over here. And again, it was trying to keep the peace within that area. There were people who said, we need to get out of here because we're putting our manpower, our military, in places that we don't need to be. So they left. And what happened in Afghanistan was the terrorist groups, because they didn't have any government to stand against them, came in and took over. Fast forward a couple of years, and we arrive at October 7th, 2023. This was a new attack. It was an attack by Hamas on Shabbat, on Simchat Torah, the day where we celebrate the completion of the reading of the Torah, another big day within the Jewish customs and community. The Hamas group sneaked across the border, and they killed over 1,200 men, women, elderly individuals, and children. They captured more than 250 hostages. These hostages were tortured. These hostages were tormented. Why did they do this? Because it was Israel. The people they captured, the people they killed, were not just Jewish people. Would that make it better? No. But Hamas wants to eliminate Israel. They want to eliminate the Jewish people. And they didn't really care who was in the way. Now, the tricky part of this is there is a difference in the value of life between the two groups in particular, between Hamas and Israel. There's a difference in the value of life between many of the Arab countries and Israel. In Israel, if you are Arab, please come live, be in peace. If you are in Israel and you are gay, please come live and be in peace. If you are in Israel and you are Jewish, please come live and be in peace. If you are in an Arab country and you're Jewish, you don't exist. Literally. If you are someone who is gay and you live in a Muslim country, you don't exist. The punishment for gay acts in Muslim countries is death. The value of human life is vastly different. There was many discussions about why Israel was killing all these people in this attack. So Hamas came in, they bombed, they took these hostages. Israel is trying to get the hostages back. Hamas's leadership does not have military bases as one would in, say, the United States military. No, they set up shops in schools, in hotels, in apartment buildings. Why? Because if and when it gets attacked, it's going to make a lot more noise. People are going to care more because there is more people at stake. Now, did Israel do as much as they could to prevent that? Absolutely. They even dropped pamphlets saying, hey, you should perhaps get out of the building on Tuesday in the afternoon because we're coming. We've got problems in your area. We're coming to fix this. But Hamas had such a tight hold on the area that they prevented people from leaving. Because if everybody got out of the way and it was just the Hamas leaders that were injured or killed, that wouldn't have nearly the impact. They needed that human life to make somebody else look like they were the bad guy. But what did they want? Why did they attack? They wanted Israel and the Jewish people dead. They wanted to make a big scene for their brothers in the other Arab countries. Validate us as a terrorist group. See how important we are. We can do good things too. It wasn't over land. It's not over rights. It's about, look what I can do, and try to knock somebody else down. Move forward a little bit more, and we're now in February 28th of 2026. And Iran, another of the Arab countries in that area, is now being targeted because they are creating missiles and nuclear weapons. And they threaten to continue to build nuclear weapons, even though they have been told that they cannot. They are trying to build their arsenal to take out Israel, and they have not made that a secret. So the U.S., knowing that Israel is their ally, their port in that area, the U.S. is not having boots on the ground. However, they're saying, okay, you need support. You need food for your people. You need this. You need that. You want to basically reset that area and allow them to reboot and build their own government. Okay, we'll help you. There is a geopolitical power struggle between the Sunni and the Shiites. When they're at war, when they're struggling with each other, that's only rising these terrorist groups. These terrorist groups are keeping on coming up. They're like bad weeds that you can't get to the root of. And if the U.S. at some point doesn't step in and help, you have a bully that's terrorizing the whole playground. You have a weed that has taken over the whole garden. And it's going to damage way more than just your plants. It's going to impact your foundation of your house. It has deeper meaning, deeper roots. And the U.S. had to step in. If the U.S. didn't, and they are the ally of Israel, that shows the rest of the world that we are not as powerful as we say we are in the U.S. If the U.S. does not maintain their position as a world leader, what's to say that China wouldn't take over Japan? What's to say that Russia wouldn't take over Ukraine again? The U.S. needed to step in to put a stop to what was going on. Israel is the U.S.'s ally. It's tough when people see that an ally who's struggling is a hindrance. What's in it for us? Safety, resources, the economic impact alone. Within Israel, there is a Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz, sorry, I pronounced that incorrectly. This strait, this small strip of water, through this passes 20% of all oil and gas. If you don't have peace in this land, you have blockades built, you have people being tortured, you have rising economic problems for other countries, you have general unrest. It is important for the U.S. to step in. It's important for Israel to be able to exist. It's important for there to be peace in the land. Am I foolish enough to think that there will always be peace in the land? No. I have 2 sisters, and I know that as much as I love them, we have never all agreed and all been peaceful at the same time for very long. You're going to have arguments. You're going to have disagreements. However, there needs to be a time where mom or dad steps in and squashes the argument. That's how I view U.S.'s stance with the whole Middle Eastern situation. The U.S. has to come in and say, nope, stop, do a reset. That's why you should care. What's happening in the Middle East is not about land. It's not about oil. Even if you're not Jewish, you should care. Because if the Arab countries, if the terrorist groups ever were to succeed in eliminating Israel or eliminating the Jewish people, mark my words, it is not the end of their fight. The Jewish people are just the first on their list. You need to care. We've seen this once before during World War II, where Hitler would make small declarations, comments, and people would turn a blind eye. Oh, they just didn't understand. Oh, they didn't want to stand out and be different. It happened with those little steps. It didn't happen with the gas chambers and the concentration camps right away. It was small steps. The time to stand up is now. The time to be an ally for those that you know that are Jewish is now. The time to care about what's happening in the Middle East is now. So, it was a long presentation. I apologize, but I hope you gained some new insight. It's a long history, but it's an important one that I did not know before doing this presentation. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, please hit that like button, hit subscribe. I promise my next video is coming out much sooner than this last one. And as always, thank you so much for joining me. I love learning with you. The more you know, the more you grow. Bye-bye.